She's the family disappointment, my dad said, chuckling as he clinked his wine glass. We try not to talk about her career choices. I sat frozen at the formal dinner table, the familiar sting of his words burning through me. For years, my family treated me like a ghost, completely erasing my achievements because I didn't follow the high society path my sister did. My sister's fiancé, Robert, smiled smugly while my dad leaned over to hiss in my ear. Don't embarrass your sister tonight. Robert's dad is a 4-star general. I kept my mouth shut, hiding the uniform I'd quietly worn with pride for over a decade. But then the heavy doors of the dining hall opened. General Samuel walked in, his chest covered in medals. My dad practically tripped over his own feet to greet him, eagerly presenting my sister. But the general looked right past them. He stopped dead in his tracks, looked directly at me, snapped a crisp salute, and offered his hand. Ma'am, it is an honor to see you again. My dad's face went completely pale, and his wine glass slipped right through his fingers. My name is Emily, and at 34 years old, I have finally learned that the people who share your blood are sometimes the ones most eager to see you bleed. Growing up under my father's roof meant surviving a relentless, suffocating regime of toxic perfectionism. To him, life wasn't about happiness. It was a ruthless corporate ladder, a game of high society optics where children were treated as investments rather than human beings. My younger sister, Vanessa, was always the undisputed golden child of the family dynasty. She was polished, effortlessly superficial, and perfectly molded to fulfill our father's grand social ambitions. Whatever Vanessa wanted, Vanessa received, while my achievements were consistently minimized, ignored, or actively erased. I was treated like a ghost in my own home, a living shadow whose quiet independence was viewed as an unforgivable act of rebellion. For over a decade, I allowed them to believe I worked a low-level, completely forgettable administrative desk job for the government. It was easier to let them look down on me than to invite their toxic scrutiny into my real life. They had absolutely no idea about the grueling physical discipline, the high-stakes tactical training, or the intense sacrifices I endured to build a career entirely on my own terms. I became an expert at swallowing my pride, silently enduring the biting remarks and the casual dismissals at every single family gathering, waiting for the day I could finally break completely free from their suffocating expectations. While my father spent his evenings bragging to his elite business associates about Vanessa's high society connections, I was living a completely different reality. The low-level, vague government desk job they all looked down on was actually a carefully crafted cover story. In reality, I had spent the last 12 years quietly climbing the ranks of strategic military intelligence. While they slept in luxurious comfort, I was deploying to high-stakes environments, managing critical security operations, and earning the kind of respect that money simply cannot buy. I kept my real career a closely guarded secret because I knew exactly what my narcissistic family would do with the truth. If they found out I was a decorated officer executing high-level defense operations, my father would immediately try to capitalize on my success, weaving my hard-earned achievements into his own public relations narrative. He would pretend he had guided my path, using my position to stroke his own massive ego and advance his commercial interests. By letting them believe I was a failure, I protected the one thing that was entirely mine. My uniform, my rank, and the deep, unwavering respect of my subordinates remained untainted by their shallow judgments. I became comfortable operating in the shadows, letting Vanessa collect her empty trophies while I built real, undeniable substance. I didn't need their validation or their applause. I had a purpose, a team, and a level of authority they couldn't even begin to comprehend, and the clock was ticking toward the moment it would all explode. The trap was sprung on a crisp Tuesday evening when an engraved invitation arrived at my apartment. It was a high-stakes dinner party celebrating Vanessa's engagement to Robert, a man whose family pedigree was supposedly flawless. Before I could even RSVP, my father called my cell phone, his voice sharp, demanding, and utterly devoid of warmth. There was no greeting, no question about my well-being, only a cold, severe warning that I was expected to attend, and above all to keep my mouth shut. Don't embarrass your sister tonight. My dad snapped over the line, the venom in his tone cutting right through the speaker. Robert's father is a four-star general, a man of immense power and prestige. This merger is critical for our family's standing, and I won't have you ruining it with your pathetic, depressing existence. He made it entirely clear that my only role at this dinner was to sit quietly, nod politely, and act as a dull, unremarkable backdrop to Vanessa's blinding brilliance. Robert's family possessed an intolerable old money arrogance, and my father was practically salivating at the chance to kneel before them. He spent days orchestrating every microscopic detail of the evening, ensuring their elite status was thoroughly warped while I was systematically pushed to the absolute fringes. I hung up the phone, feeling the familiar icy knot tighten in my stomach. They wanted a submissive family disappointment to kick around for the evening to make themselves look grander, but they had absolutely no idea who was actually walking through those dining hall doors. The formal dining hall of the exclusive country club was suffocatingly opulent, dripping with crystal chandeliers and a thick, heavy layer of pretension. I was intentionally seated at the absolute far edge of the long mahogany table, as close to the service doors as possible, a calculated move by my father to keep his self-proclaimed failure out of sight. Vanessa sat at the center, radiating smug satisfaction next to Robert, whose family sneered at anyone who hadn't inherited a legacy. As the wine flowed, the passive-aggressive jabs began, disguised as polite dinner conversation. Robert's mother condescendingly asked about my little office job, prompting Vanessa to giggle softly into her silk napkin. I remained perfectly still, maintaining the disciplined posture I had mastered through years of military training. My silence only emboldened my father, who was eager to prove his loyalty to his new powerful in-laws. He raised his glass, offering a grand toast to Vanessa and Robert before looking directly at me. "She's the family disappointment," my dad said, chuckling as he clinked his glass against Robert's. "We try not to talk about her career choices. Some people just lack the ambition to achieve real greatness." The table erupted into polite, cruel amusement. Robert smiled smugly, while my dad leaned over the back of my chair to hiss directly into my ear. "Don't embarrass your sister tonight with a scene. Robert's dad is a four-star general, and you're nothing." I swallowed the burning rage, keeping my eyes fixed forward, hiding the absolute power I held over every single person in that room. The oppressive atmosphere of the dining room shifted instantly as the grand double doors swung open and General Samuel stepped inside. He was a commanding figure. His chest a brilliant tapestry of medals and ribbons that speak of decades of high-level sacrifice and strategic command. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. My father practically tripped over his own feet, knocking his chair back as he scrambled to greet the distinguished guest. His face warped into a sycophantic, eager grin. "General Samuel, what an absolute honor," my dad gushed, gesturing wildly toward Vanessa and Robert. "Allow me to present my daughter, Vanessa, and your son. We were just discussing how true excellence and leadership run deeply in our family bloodlines." He stood there practically vibrating with desperate, unearned pride, waiting for a nod of approval from the most powerful man in the room. But General Samuel didn't look at my father, and he didn't look at Vanessa. His sharp, disciplined gaze swept past their eager faces and locked directly onto me at the far corner of the table. The room went dead silent as the general stopped in his tracks. He bypassed my father entirely, stepping around the stunned couple and walked straight toward my isolated chair. Before anyone could breathe, the four-star general snapped to attention, brought his hand to his brow in a crisp, flawless military salute, and offered his hand to me. "Ma'am, it is an absolute honor to see you again," he said, his booming voice echoing off the walls. My dad's face went completely pale, and his expensive wine glass slipped right through his fingers, shattering onto the marble floor. The sound of the shattering glass seemed to echo forever in the paralyzed room. My father stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, while Vanessa and Robert stared in absolute horror. General Samuel maintained his rigid salute until I stood up calmly, returned the gesture, and took his hand. Good to see you, General, I said, my voice steady and commanding, cutting through the thick layer of shock. I had no idea you were related to these people, Colonel, General Samuel said, turning a cold, assessing look toward my father. If I had known the architect of our entire regional defense strategy was dining here tonight, I would have arrived much sooner. The word colonel hit my family like a physical blow. The low-level, boring government desk job they had mocked for 12 years was suddenly unmasked as a high-ranking military officer who commanded the respect of a 4-star general. My father tried to salvage his dignity, desperately stepping forward with a sweaty, trembling smile. Colonel Emily, you never mentioned. General, please understand. We are so incredibly proud of our Emily's achievements. It was a pathetic, disgusting display of backpedaling, an instant attempt to claim my hard work as a badge of honor for his own ego. But General Samuel saw right through the sycophancy. He stepped between us, completely cutting my father off, and looked down at Robert. Son, I hope you understand the level of leadership sitting at this table. You would do well to learn from her. I didn't stay for the rest of the dinner. I picked up my coat, looked my father dead in the eye, and walked out of the country club without saying another word. The power dynamic in our family collapsed completely that night. My father's desperate attempts to call and text me over the next few months went completely unanswered. While Vanessa and Robert's high society wedding was completely overshadowed by the lingering embarrassment of that dinner, they spent their lives chasing empty status while I built a legacy of real substance. Now, I'm curious about all of you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my shoes and your family completely underestimated you? Have you ever had a moment where you finally turned the tables on the people who tried to make you feel small? Comment below and let me know your thoughts and the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. Meanwhile, I'm leaving 2 other incredible stories on the screen that will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.